Save it for when we get there, you know, that's. All right.
I ramble.
Again, like I said, there's a lot of stuff that I picked up on in that letter that I think speak to something much more complex. But
Ooh, where do I get mine?
the irony of all this, and then going to the press about it, but I'll tell you what my most immediate concern is. My most immediate concern is that they show up here again, right? Because you get booted from well, that's what happened with.
Oh, yeah, I didn't think about that.
Yes.
Embed that name on it.
I don't know. I think we have to be high. That might have been why he was calling. That might have been why he was calling was to give you a heads up. So, sorry. Yes, we're six is already five more than I was expecting. So, is there anybody that would like to light candles tonight? Anybody that
I couldn't get up.
particularly would enjoy it? No. I'll leave you guys to ruminate on that while I go to the restroom.
I'm not gonna stand up.
It's four ladies, four paragraphs, four columns.
Is it on the internet or on?
Yeah, but you can't get it for our taxes.
So they made a big article about it?
The guy wrote that, no, it's not an article, the guy wrote a letter.
To the rabbi?
No, he wrote it against the rabbi.
Who is that?
Rabbi
The
Josh?
JCOA. Evidently,
What?
one of the members
No,
went to
no,
the
no.
university where they spoke about Gaza and Israel, where they had a speaker. And they went to, I guess, a gathering, and evidently the guy's wife, I don't know what happened. He wrote a 4-column letter to the Star.
Why did you have candles tonight?
That his wife was banned from Shabbat on the beach
I can stand up and
and
put up.
banned from the synagogue, he can never come again. He doesn't really
I don't get to light my
talk
candles
about
anymore.
what she did, but evidently
I have a
there's
nice,
a lot of conversation about this
Shabbat
general that
candles
came
and
from
tray
the
and
IDF to speak,
candlesticks, and I'm always here.
she
Oh,
didn't
I
agree
don't
with
get
him, and
I
God
haven't
knows
gotten to
what
light them
happened.
in a long time.
But she was banned from the synagogue. Who bans the convert from the synagogue or from Shabbat on the beach? So I'm reading this, I'm going like, what? This is a letter, he letters to the editor. No, I'm serious. Josh read
over there
this week. He didn't call him back.
They,
I can't read it now.
I want you to, I'm not gonna turn it.
summer, without a doubt. Of course, when I can't take advantage of it, but that's such is life. All right, we'll need this later. Don't if I forget, don't let me forget to talk about the food drive.
If you do take a picture, can you email it?
Do 3 or 4. Why don't you take a picture of it? Yeah, that's a good idea. And then do 3 or 4. Just take a picture of it. Hi. Yeah, take a photo.
Well, I tried to retire a couple of years ago, but I failed. So I went back to half-time.
I was
I thought all telemedicine.
hot. Hot. There's no air conditioning.
Hey, Ridwan. Cannot talk to you. That's always good. My percentage is very low in comparison to most of the world. Okay, sure. I know. This is where you got that. I think this is that time of year, right, where you got that one shot with the. Oh yeah, no, that's true. It's basically whenever it's about to switch over, right? That you get this little bit of time where it comes in, which is good. All right. Yeah. Hello, Hills. How are you? All right. Yes, I yeah, I have actually, you know what I realized what we need is I need just to have like a bunch of sweatshirts just waiting for people to take a sweatshirt if they need to. No,
You don't want me to fall asleep, right?
it's all part of my grand design. I've thought through all of the details. You're the only one that's picked up on it so far. It's all part of the plan.
Have you ever heard of this guy, Aronson? He was this Zionist in World War I.
Uh-huh.
And there's a book called Aronson and Lawrence. And
Really?
he was,
That's fascinating. I would love to read that. Right, no, that actually is really interesting. No, I
gave
thought.
away the book. I should have given it
No,
to
no,
you.
no, that's okay. That's enough for me to go and do some reading. That's great.
It's very interesting about how Lawrence was on the Arab side, but he was very open to the Jews. He would not.
Yeah, no, that wasn't his. I think actually, if anything about him was that he was really against, I think, his like the British, right? In other words, like he was open-minded to the Middle East, as it were. But anyway, you and me will catch up another time about it. But I'm gonna look into it though.
And he was called Aronson.
Aaron, it's a great name.
And
Nobody's gonna
that's
forget a
the
name
same-
like that.
That's the same name as Emma. And I mentioned she said no.
No, I think it's because of its most likely translation, right, of B'nai Aharon or something like that. Chances are it's one of those things where like these were probably Kohans, and then eventually their name became Aronson or whatever it is. But who knows? I mean, the history of names is fascinating. And how that all came about. So my guess is there's too many Aronsons to know whether you're related. Geffens, there are not that many of. The 2F Geffens is really only my family. There isn't. There's not many Hillels either. That's a much harder title to earn. Hillel's a.
Well, the only thing I could do is not embarrass him.
That's the way I look at my thing too. You're at like 100%. That's exactly it. That's it.
I know.
All right.
Yeah, because of my necklace is the same.
Of course you can. No. You can speak anytime. Anytime and anytime. Give me 1 second. I just gotta go give a.
There's none in there.
Yeah, they're in the front. You have to go pick them up.
No. Talking about the books and the
Oh,
boxes.
they're not
Put
in
'em
there.
there, then there's none there.
Oh, you guys have all. They missed the room. Well, there's some over there.
Yeah.
Here.
We got the books, Janet.
My dad said it was so big. This paper is so big.
Ooh. Oh, you're kidding. Hey, Carl. I'll have to catch up on that one. That's.
Really? Oh, wow.
Alrighty.
You should see her. You should see her garden.
Ah, see, it turned off. I told you it was going to turn off, and it actually did it this time. Small successes, you know? You have to celebrate the small successes in life. It's too hot. It's too hot. Oh, man. I'm already planning my final sermon for however many years when I retire, right? It will just be about finally getting the temperature right for everybody. All right. Well, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Gemar Chatima Tova. I know I saw many, if not most, if not all of you, but I hope that you had a wonderful and meaningful Rosh Hashanah and that you began the holiday with great meaning wherever you might have been, whether you were with us here, whether you're watching at home, whether you were somewhere else altogether. You know, one of the beauties, I think, of the age in which we live, I don't know whether you all take advantage of it in the way that I do, and I'll tell you this, I will never feel like you're cheating on me if you go and watch other rabbis' sermons after the service is over. It's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing. Of all the terrible stuff that technology has produced, the very fact that a Jewish person living anywhere in the world can go, a few hours later and watch sermons from the greatest rabbis, not me, right? The greatest rabbis in the world is a hopeful thing, right? Because if we're in fact doing that, I think from the total picture, I hope that the Jewish people will be moved in some way or the other. And it also frees me from the obligation of feeling like every one of my sermons has to be the be-all, end-all sermon. You can't cover every topic. So between myself and my colleagues, I think every topic I could imagine was largely covered. So if you don't really know how to do that and you'd like some suggestions of people to listen to, I'm happy to get you started in that direction. But believe it or not, with a really minimal amount of Googling, you can learn quite a great deal. I can see that Mimi is ready to light and bless our Shabbat candles. So as she is doing so, let's all just take a moment. Let's wish each other a Shabbat Shalom. If you want to add Gemar Chatima Tova, Shana Tova, and especially if you don't recognize the people around you, make sure you introduce yourselves. And Mimi, I can't think of a better person to help light and bless tonight. Yeah, all right. Okay, we'll gather our attention back. Yeah, that does work, Okay.
Tzivonu lahaliknei, Tzivonu lahaliknei shel Shabbat. Praised art thou, O Lord, our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us by his commandments and commanded that we light the lights of Shabbat. May we all be blessed with peace.
Indeed. Well said, Mimi. I think we should have given the sermon to you tonight. And speaking of which, just to put into everybody's hopper, this is our now annual tradition going back many years where, the rabbi only has so many sermons in him, so for Shabbat Shuvah Friday night, we make an Ask the Rabbi occasion, so you can start to think about what your questions might be. I will just ask one grace to your rabbi, right? But maybe not tonight to ask me the immediate contemporary questions of the last week or whatever it might be, but maybe think about questions, for example, about Yom Kippur that's coming up, or about Rosh Hashanah that's passed, something maybe that you don't understand, something that maybe we did this year that was a little different, something that you've wanted to know more about, something along those lines, I think, because those things will actually help us to connect better to this time period. And another time, if you want to pepper me with questions about what's going on, I'm happy to do that as well. But I think for this Shabbat, we'll focus a little bit more inwardly in that sense. But something tells me, even in that way, we will be connected to the bigger questions of life as well. So we're going to get started with our service on page 130, and I'll just note, how much we miss her when she's not here. But didn't Emma do such a fantastic job? Fantastic job. Really, it's an amazing thing. Oh, and just one last word. You can go watch Will for what he did at Rodef. So if you want to support Will also, he did a number of things over there that were recorded. He did a fantastic job also. So, or Lauren in LA, everybody basically at this point, you can go watch all of our favorite student cantors from years past, which is great. But tonight you're stuck with me. So we're on page 130. I hope you'll sing along. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena, l'Adonai. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena, l'Adonai. Naria, naria, letzuri, shenu nekad mafanav v'todah. Naria, naria, letzuri, shenu, bizmirot naria lo. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena, l'Adonai. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena, l'Adonai. We're now on page 131, Shiru Ladonai, just towards the top of the page in Hebrew. Shiru Ladonai, Shiru Shir Chadash, Shiru Ladonai, Kol Haaretz, Shiru Ladonai, Baruchu Shemo, Basru Meyom Leyom Yeshuato, Shiru Ladonai, Baruchu Shemo, Basru Meyom Leyom Yeshuato, Shiru Ladonai, Shiru Shir Chadash, Shiru Ladonai, Kol Haaretz, Shiru Ladonai, Baruchu Shemo, Basru Meyom Leyom Yeshuato, Shiru Ladonai, Baruchu Shemo, Basru Meyom Leyom Yeshuato. We turn now to Or Zaru on the bottom of page 132. Or Zaru ala tzadik, uleishrei lev simcha. Or Zaru ala tzadik, uleishrei lev simcha. Simechu tzadikim b'Adonai, Behodu lezecher kodsho. Simechu tzadikim b'Adonai, Behodu lezecher kodsho. We turn now to Zamru Ladonai, top of page 134. Zamru Ladonai bechinor, bechinor vekol zimra, Bachatzotzrot vekol shofar, Hariu lifnei hamelech Adonai, Yiram hayamum lo, Tevel ve'yoshreva, Neharot yimcha uchaf yachad, Harim yiraneinu, Lifnei Adonai kiva, lishbot haaretz,
ישפוט תבל וצדק, ועמים במישרים. ירם הים ומלואו, תבל ויושבי בה. נהרות ימחאו כף יחד, הרים ירננו. We're now in the middle of page 135, Romemu, which is the last paragraph in Hebrew. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu veishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu veishtachavu lehar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu veishtachavu lehar kodsho. We'll turn now to the top of page 136, the 29th Psalm. Mizmor leDavid, havu l'Adonai b'nei Elim, havu l'Adonai kavod va'oz, havu l'Adonai kevod shemo, ishtachavu l'Adonai behadrat kodesh. Kol Adonai al hamayim, el hakavod hirim. Adonai al mahayim rabim. Adonai al mahayim rabim. Kol Adonai ba'koach. Kol Adonai behadar, Kol Adonai shover harazim, Vaishaber Adonai et arzei halvanon, Vayakidehem kemo hegel, Levanon vesiryon, Kemo ben re'emim, Kemo ben re'emim. Kol Adonai chotzev lahabotesh, Kol Adonai yachil midbar, Yachil Adonai midbar kadesh, Kol Adonai yecholel hayalot, Vayechesov yeharot, Uvechalo kulo mekavod, kulo mekavod, kulo mekavod. Adonai lamabul yashav, vayeshev Adonai melech leolam. Adonai oz le'amo yiten, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. We'll turn to L'Chadodi now on page 138. We'll do the first, second, fifth, and ninth paragraphs. And for the final paragraph, we'll rise and face the door as we walk through before. Lecha dodi likrat chala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat chala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor, b'dibur echad hishmianu, El hameyuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad, L'shem u'tiferet, v'helitila alecha dodi, Likrat kala B'nei Shabbat nekabela, Likrat Shabbat לכו ונלכה כי מקור הברכה מראש מקדם נסוכה סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה לך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה התעוררי כי בא אורך קומי אורי שיר דברי כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה עליך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה גם בשמחה ובצולתוך אמוני עם סגולה בואי חלה עליך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה. Please be seated. We'll turn now to page 140, Tzaddik Katamar, where the Hebrew indents in the middle of the page. Tzaddik Katamar Yifrach Keres Bavanon Yizke Shetulim Beveit Adonai Bechatzrot Eloheinu Yafrichu Od Yenuvun Beseva Deshenim Berhananim Yehu Lehagid Ki Ashar Adonai Tzuri Velo Avlatabo. We rise in body or spirit for the Chatzi Kaddish on page 144 and remain standing for the Baruch Hu on the next page. Yitkadal ve'yitkadash shemei Rabbah ve'alma divrach chirutei ve'amlich malchutei b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'b'chayei dechol beit Yisrael ba'agalaha Uvizman kari veimeru. Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach le'alam li'al me'al maya yitbarach ve'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalal shemei dekudsha brichu leila min kol birchata v'shirata Tushbechata v'nechemata tamiran behalma v'yimeru. Amen. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach leolam va'ed. Please be seated. We'll turn to page 148 as we read together in English toward the bottom of the page. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzvaot is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evening. Umahavir yom umevi laila, Umavdil ben yom uven laila, Adonai tzvaot shemo. El chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai amari v'aravim. We'll turn to page 151 as we read together in English toward the top of the page. As you taught Torah to those whose names I bear, teach me Torah too. Its mystery beckons, yet I struggle with its truth. You meant Torah for me. Did you mean the struggle for me too? Don't let me struggle alone. Help me to understand, to be wise, to listen, to know. Lead me into the mystery. Ki ehem chayinu ve'orech yaminu, uvahem nege yomav v'layla, v'abatcha tasir mimenu liolamim, baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Please join me on the top of page 154. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, v'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol meodecha, ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele, asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha, v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam, v'shiftecha b'veitecha u'v'lechtecha b'derech, u'v'shochbecha u'v'kumecha, u'kshartam leot al yadecha, v'hayu letotafot bein einecha, u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha, u'visharecha, leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai, v'yitem kedoshim le'elohechem, ani Adonai Elohechem, asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, liot lachem le'elohim, ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem emet. Let's read together now on the top of page 157, and then quickly on to page 158. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believed and we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together. As we turn to page 158. Yabai by bim bim bam, yabai by bim bam, yabai by bim bim bam, yabai by bim bam, yabai ba 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 ba, yabai by bim bam, yabai ba 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 ba, yabai by bim bam, mihi kamocha bailim Adonai, mihi kamocha nedar bakodesh. Norat hilot o sefele, norat hilot o sefele, yabai by bim bim bam, yabai by bim bam, yabai by bim bim bam, yabai by bim bam, yabai ba 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 ba, yabai by bim bam, yabai ba 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 ba, yabai by bim bam. Malchutecha ra'u vanecha, bokeyam lifnei Moshe Miriam ze'lianu ve'amru, Adonai himloch le'olam va'ed, v'nemar kifad Adonai et Yaakov, ugolo miad chazak mimenu, baruch atah Adonai, gal Yisrael. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up, waiting to do your will. Hashkivenu is on the top of page 160. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom, ve'hamidenu shomreinu lechayim, Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom Ve'hamidenu shomreinu lechayim Ushmor tzeiteinu Uvoeinu Lechayim u'shalom Me'ata ve'ad olam Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom Ve'hamidenu shomreinu lechayim. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people, Israel, and over Yerushalayim. We turn to Veshamru on page 162. Veshamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael oti leolam oti leolam Veshamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat La'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam Ki sheshet yamim hasadonai et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz ve'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat La'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam Uvayom hashvi shavat vayinafash, shavat vayinafash, shavat vayinafash, veshamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, ledorotam berit olam. I invite us now to rise in body or spirit as we begin the Amidah together on page 164. From that point on, we'll continue silently. As always, please go at your own pace. When you're finished at the end, if you're still standing, you may be seated. One last thing to note, there are a few places in the Amidah where there are special inserts for Shabbat Shuvah. They're pretty clearly indicated. An example would be on page 166, so you can certainly add those in. Just pay close attention because there are several places throughout the Amidah. Again, we'll begin together, page 164, and then continue silently from there. Adonai sefatai tiftachu fi agitei latecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Ose shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. We turn now to page 371 as we offer our Mishaberach, our healing prayer for this evening. We think first of those in our community that we are thinking of tonight: Ronnie Lidowitz, Madeline Egelfeld, Abigail Blum, Kate Sherwood, Herman Gould, Ellen Ruby, Ame and Warren Cass, Rivka Bat Rachel, Lorraine Danis, David Dowling, Sylvia Devora Bat Francis, Shelley Newmark, Diane Axelrod, Gabriella Spicer, David Kyle Klotman, Lorraine Davis, Kim Birnbaum, Deborah Block-Kroll, Sylvia Oren, Rachel Bat Ora, Peretz Ben Shlomo, Israel Ben Yitzchak, Jill Fagan, Alona Bat Rachel, Mort, and Judy. In addition to those names that I just shared, if there's anyone that you're thinking of this evening who you are praying for, we'll start on this side of the room and work to the back of the room and then this side. And if you have names to share, just please raise a hand so I don't miss anybody.
Gerald Emmanuel, Jackie Emmanuel, Donna Gesper, Kimberly Espinosa, Chris Hubbard, Linda Lanigan, and Kelly Mulholland.
Becca Edelman, Suzanne Hurst, Karen Sherwood,
Audrey Tempesky, Diane Schwartz, Maureen Kane, Mario, Annie Rodman, Judy Lippin, Lauren, Meredith Berger, Dottie, Kevin Majors, another Honey, Adrian Berger, Kathy Gray, Susan Barron, Mary Fox Kane, Diane Lewis, Diane Youngblood, Ellen Ruby, Joe L., Anne, and Denise Dubé.
Melissa Benzante, Charlie Zweig, Marilyn Goldstein, Marilyn Frankenbaum, Nikki Ayers, and Sherry Whitman.
Hart Babajanian, Joseph Maroni, Tripp Stratton.
Helen Piccolora, Xenia Stefanu, and Barbara Clare.
Of course, we invite our friends watching at home to add the names of your loved ones as well. So we join together in the Mishaberach in the middle of page 371. Mishaberach avoteinu mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. Now for our prayer for Israel and its people by Rabbi Yahya Tobias. May it be your will that the state of Israel become a worthy home for all its citizens. May love, peace, security, and the will to work together flourish, and may all hatred, fear, neglect, and apathy be banished. We ask of Israel's leaders, judges, and elected officials that they may govern with wisdom, good faith, and walk in the path of integrity and justice. We pray for the well-being of all who safeguard the security of the state. Soldiers, police forces, and medical personnel, may they go forth in peace and return in peace. May we soon see all hostages return safely to their loved ones' embrace speedily in our days. We bless all who work and invest in Israel with dedication and love. May we know better days, and may these sacred words be fulfilled. The words of Isaiah, violence shall no longer be heard in your land. Leviticus, and I will grant peace in the land. And Isaiah again, nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. And let us say together, Amen. Well, Shabbat Shalom and Lashana Tova to everyone. For those that maybe are just joining, this is now, I want to say maybe up until my first year here, became an annual tradition that the Friday of Shabbat Shuvah became an Ask the Rabbi session, which we do a few times throughout the year. Because, the obvious, okay, your rabbi is a human being. My brain can only do so many things in a short period of time. But I think it's also a beautiful opportunity for what a lot of people actually don't generally have, which is to ask questions about things that they've been perhaps walking around with for quite some time. So the only thing I asked of Rahmanis, as they say, of compassion, remember one of my big sermons recently was about having even small compassion, which is, as much as I am generally comfortable answering any question, for the purposes of this evening, let's try to keep it focused more on things related to the high holidays, questions about the liturgy, either about what Rosh Hashanah that just happened, about Yom Kippur that's coming up, things in general, questions, on a philosophical or theological level. Those are things that I think I'm happy to answer. And if you ask me a question that perhaps is not necessarily what I would answer right this second, I'm happy to answer it, any other time we can make those arrangements. Now, I'm just going to have to ask a favor so that people that are watching on home will be able to hear what your questions are. Boy, Kathy, I hate to ask this because I know you're sitting in the front row. You don't have to be Barbara Walters. You can just, hand it to each person. Now, let me just, I don't want you to have to keep walking around and stuff, but let me just explain very quickly for those that will have the mic in their hand at some point. So these microphones, as you can tell, they're set up by design to not be like this, because if you're like this, it's a little too much. So generally, somewhere in this range, it should pick you up just fine. And that's the Cantor's one, so it should really pick you up just fine. So I guess, Kathy, we'll give you the first option if you want to ask a question, since you're so kindly going to answer or walk it around. And then you'll call on whoever you want to call on. Okay.
I have a question. It's very trite, I'm sure.
No such thing.
I'm
no such
not
thing.
sure if it's halakha or custom, but
Okay,
there are like
good.
4 or 5 places in the service that we do physical things.
Yes, excellent.
Okay, I get the Orleno because that says bow down, lift up. I really don't know why we do 3 times with our eyes for
Shabbat? Yeah.
I don't know why we say Bowie Kala.
Excellent.
And I don't know why, sometimes when I'm davening the I know Baruch Atah Adonai.
Yep.
Okay, so that's the Adonai
Yep.
has to be your head going down, but I'm not really sure about
Okay,
that.
no,
I'm
this
sort
is
of faking it.
No, you're not faking it, and this
Because I really
is
don't
not
know
a
the
trite
real-
question at all. My guess is that in this room there are many
Yeah.
people who have
I've been
wondered those
faking it
exact
for
same
years.
things.
I don't
Right?
know.
Let's show of hands, just out of curiosity. Yeah, there you go.
Oh,
For those watching at
wow.
home, it's quite a few hands. And
Thank
let me
you.
just say, shame on your rabbi, frankly, that I haven't taken the opportunity to explain this a little bit more. Years ago I taught a sort of introduction to the liturgy course, and in that, where you can really go prayer by prayer, you can explain it kind of in situ in its place. Because each one of the things that you mentioned, Kathy, each one of them does have a logic and a reason. Sometimes those reasons are good reasons, sometimes they are maybe less so. And what straddles the line between, as you mentioned, right, 2 very important ideas within Jewish practice of halakha, which is the legal idea, right? What is the right and the wrong as far as a legal standpoint? And the much more common and often mistaken minhag, which is custom. Now, you should understand, and I'll work my way back to the specific questions, but broadly speaking, minhag is a very powerful thing within Judaism, since Rabbinic Judaism became our main manifestation of our religion. And by that I mean, especially when you think about the nature of what it was to be a Jew living all over the world, it's very hard sometimes to establish certain things that will apply every single place. And each community, understandably, in diaspora, took on a lot of the personality of the places in which people were living. So minhag ends up becoming so powerful that the rabbis basically say that if a minhag has been in place for long enough, and it's broadly determined, right, long enough, or who established the minhag in the first place, it becomes as if it is law. Okay? Now, does that mean if you don't bow at the right moment that you're going to be struck down or something of that effect? Of course not. Of course not. But I think it speaks to that sort of tension, that beautiful tension in Judaism between 2 other ideas, keva and kavanah, right? The sort of fixed nature of how we do things, and that space for the human creativity that allows us to, I think, experience Judaism in a dynamic way. Because if you imagine, right, there's the sort of the old joke that says, right, you call something Torah mi Sinai. It literally means, right, Torah that was given on Mount Sinai, but it's used sort of jokingly when you say, right? That this is the kind of thing that's been going on at the temple for so long, it's as if it's Torah Sinai, right? That it's been around for that long. And if any of you have had experience in different congregations, for certain, you will walk in and I would say 80% will feel similar, maybe somewhere less or more, but there will always be some part of it that you look around and everybody else seems to know what they're doing and you're not really sure what's going on. So that, first of all, just to make sure everybody feels comfortable with being in that space, know that even if you're a person that grew up in synagogues, even if you are an Orthodox person, right, who has been that way since birth, if you take that person and you bring them even to another Orthodox community, there will be any number of things that they will experience that will be slightly different in one form or the other. But there are certain things that are fixed, or certain things that are generally fixed. One of which, for example, is what we might call a sort of sacred choreography. Okay, places in the service in which we are doing things physically that we don't do in other parts of the service. So let's take one of the most ubiquitous, right, which is one of the ones that you mentioned, Kathy, the bowing. So you acknowledge, right, at the end of the service, we have a prayer called Aleinu. And in Aleinu, I'll turn around to demonstrate it. Generally speaking, this is a good example of minhag. Okay, many Reform congregations have the tradition of actually standing for Aleinu, but also opening the ark. And when you open the ark, generally, you're not supposed to have your back to it. So you will generally see the clergy turn and face this direction. If you saw a few places where Emma and I were kind of looking at each other and kind of going back and forth like this, it's partially because of that, because the tradition of the synagogue where she grew up is to open the ark and to be facing that way. And in our case, that was often the case, not always, but since the streaming stuff, as you can imagine, when you turn that way, we have exactly the challenge of the audio stuff, which is why we have those special things and, set up for the holidays only. Anyway, back to the bowing. So in that prayer, right, Va'anachnu kor'im umishtachavim umodim. Right? Those are the three sort of words. And in Hebrew, if you understand them, generally they are pointing in the direction of sort of each of those elements. But if we can try to think for a second, why would bowing of all the behaviors be the thing that we would do in a moment in which we're praying, right? Aleinu l'shabeach means that it's basically us taking on our role as, serving and worshiping God. Okay, I know that made it be an uncomfortable statement for everybody, but that is the basic idea of it. So why might we, of all the gestures, right, instead of giving God a big thumbs up, or waving, or any number of other things, right? If you follow any other religious traditions, right, other religions do lots of different things, but why would we choose bowing of all things? Just give it a second and think about it.
Your head is below your heart.
That's a lovely...
So that means that there's more humility.
I think so. This is a great example of what Marcia gave. Actually, is a beautiful drush. I've never heard anybody say it that way. But that's a beautiful drush. I think actually that's lovely.
It's also a yoga thing.
I'm sure that there is something to be said for that. So, all right, so let's hold that. That's a beautiful idea. What else?
She said was that the head is lower than the heart.
Yeah. Don't worry. As long as it's in that general, it'll probably pick up, some of those. What else? What other reasons? Exactly. Okay. So the most straightforward understanding is and just to be clear, when the rabbis choose that word, right, they choose that word very cautiously because our association as human beings with the word king or queen is corporeal, right? Most of us will think of that as a human being and will relate to it as such. Even the greatest kings and queens of history, by our tradition, are considered secondary to the sort of king of kings, as it were. But in the ancient world, right, the most powerful entity in most people's lives, and I shouldn't even say all that ancient, right? Some people still live in that circumstance in the world. Some might argue closer to home that we might be living in those circumstances, right? So in those situations, we try to think about what is a respectful way to greet, right, our Avinu, our Malkeinu, right, our parent, our sovereign, as it were, and to do that certainly by bowing. Now, I'll add a layer to it. If you may remember, not so long ago, we just did the Amidah, and we do something right before the Amidah formally begins. We say the words Adonai Sifatai Tiftach, Ufi Agid Tehilatecha, right? We're asking God to help open up our lips so that we can sing praise. And what is the behavior? Right? We take 3 steps backwards, and we take 3 steps forwards. So I don't know if any of you are as interested in feudal Japan or Japanese history as I am, but one of the things that you will learn, right, is it's not just a question of bowing. how you bow, how you enter a room, how you exit a room, right, matters a great deal. It adds both, I think, a element of utmost respect, but it also keeps a certain system in place, right? So that everybody knows this is the behavior, this is the way that we do things, this is the appropriate way to do it. Okay, so that was, a big part of it. But the other piece of it, when we get a little bit further, for example, into the Amidah, you may, this will be tomorrow, not tonight, when we get to the Kedusha, you'll see myself and the cantor, right, go up like this 3 times, okay, or we'll say Kara Zeh El Zeh Ve'amar and go like this. So that is mimicking a description of what the angels do in the presence of God, right? They physically, again, whatever the imagination of angels, in your mind is, right, that this is the way in which they interact. And a lot of what the rabbis do for us, they say, right, if we're not sure what to do, let's look at the ministering angels and see how they behave when they are in God's presence. And we're going to take a lot of that idea and we're going to apply it in our service. So that even though obviously we're down here, we're not up there, we're not angels, we're not anything of the sort, that we treat our service with a consciousness that it's not just a matter of, right, one element or the other, right? Our heart, our mouth, our mind, and ultimately our body. So this, of course, extends to questions also of things like when do we stand up, when do we sit down, why bow in certain places and not other places. I'll throw one other wrinkle, which is in the Amidah, right? Normally our bowing process is knees and then a bend over and then up this way. There is a prayer of thanks, the Modim prayer that happens towards the very end of the Amidah. In that case, you're only bending from the waist. You're not doing in both cases. And while this is obviously not my area of expertise, if any of you have ever had experience either in, especially Catholic or Episcopal services, or if you've ever been to a mosque and experienced a service in a mosque, you will see, again, all manner of sacred choreography, right? And each of those positions or placement of hand or body in space, every single one of them has layers upon layers upon layers of meaning. But I can tell you without any question that while it could be described as halakha, most of those things do not fall into that category. Most of those things fall, at least in their origin point, into minhag. And the reason I say that is because most of the origin point of Rabbinic Judaism, if you're trying to understand where all of this kind of comes from, you open the Mishnah and you open the Gemara, and most of it is a conversation where different rabbis say, I was visiting so-and-so rabbi who lived far away, and I walked in the door and they did something different, right? Who is the correct person? And it will lead to a whole conversation about whose minhag really is the proper and so on. And it gets even more complicated from there, which I won't go into because I could talk about this subject all night long. But needless to say, even in this day, Ashkenazi, Sephardi, Mizrahi, even within the ultra-Orthodox, if you're a Chabad, if you're a Satmar, if you're I always forget the other really big one. Lubavitch. Well, Lubavitch is Chabad, but it's there's another, like a mirror yeshiva student. You're going to find all manner of different minhag. Last word on this, and then we'll give to other questions. So those that know me know that my great-grandfather, my grandfather, my brother, right, I come from a rabbinic family, but my great-grandfather was the rabbinic authority of the United States in the southern region in his days when he lived in Atlanta. And so you can imagine, he's about as orthodox a guy as you're ever going to find. And there is a tradition in many households to place salt on challah when you eat it on a Friday night. And there's a few different reasons why that's the case. Some of it is a callback to the temple. Some of it is just that it tastes delicious or whatever. But my dad told me the story that at some point or another, because our family does not do that, and my great-grandfather described it as meshuggah frum. So if you don't know what those two words mean, right, yeah, it just basically means at a certain point, if you want to, minhag can get to the point of the near absurd. And so the balancing act of it all is that usually if a minhag is really absurd, it falls out of usage. But some things are vestiges of thousands of years of practice, and it may depend on whether your family came from Poland, or it came from, my case, Lithuania, or if you came from Northern Africa, or you came from the Middle East, or you came from, Russia, right? If a famous story again of our cemetery, right? All it took was a disagreement between some parts of our community, right, to split the cemetery in two. Right? A lot of that stuff wasn't even necessarily about halacha. It was really about minhag. It was about, what was customarily done by each community. So, excellent question. We'll have to do that.
You missed one, the Bowie cologne. Well, is it left side, right side? Just
Oh,
the right way.
okay. Look, I will. The way I do it is, to the left and to the right. I'm sure that there is an answer to that is more definitive than what your rabbi does. I'll look into that as to see, but usually there is. Like, if you're ever really curious about this stuff, the Shulchan Aruch and its accompanying Ashkenazi gloss, what's called the Mapa, right? Those two things together will give you 90% insight into what the normative practice is of traditional Judaism vis-a-vis virtually everything. But like I said, then you get into the granular stuff and it gets pretty crazy from there. Okay, I think Marcia has a question, and Janet had a question, and Rivlin had a question, and Linda had a question. All right, I have to keep an eye on the time here. I didn't, Yeah, wait till Kathy. Can you bring the mic over? Just make sure to have the mic when you ask the question. Yeah.
So in the conservative temple that I was at this week, the rabbi and the cantor literally lay down on the ground
Yes,
during
and you would have
and
absolutely. So what you're
right?
referring to, and this is a once a year experience, which is part of what's called the Great Aleinu. It is part of the service of Malchuyot, which is the first of the special shofar services. And the tradition, if you are physically able to do so, is indeed to fully genuflect, is the terminology, right? And so, in Emma's case, she sang. Believe it or not, many cantors somehow or another are able to do that and sing at the same time. I don't know how that's possible. And we used to actually invite that opportunity here in the temple until both COVID and I think common sense, got into the way, which was that God forbid, right? There's an emergency, and you have a whole bunch of people lying in the pews. It was a genuine concern of mine. I really was. It's the only reason why I don't do it anymore. But it is generally understood to be done that way. And actually, if you're doing it in its most proper fashion, it's called hidur mitzvah. You're supposed to basically get down and then get back up again without assistance. And not only without assistance, without really having left your place. Because 30-second aside, there is an entire section of the Talmud that talks about when it is acceptable to break your focus on the Amidah. Traditionally, you're not supposed to say anything. You're not supposed to move. Once you do this backwards, you're supposed to stay firmly in place. So much so that if there are questions of, let's say the emperor walks up to you as you're praying, because this is a time where, right, Jews were under the control of the Romans or the Greeks, Greco-Roman, right? If the emperor walks by, are you to stop your Amidah to greet them? And if I remember correctly, the answer is yes, only because you likely will die if you don't do that. And that's a similar thing, right? If a snake comes up and is around your leg, if it's not a poisonous snake, you're supposed to stay basically in place and continue to daven. So, but again, these are things the rabbis are talking about in the Mishnah and in the Gemara. So you're talking about like 200, 300, 400, 500 CE, sorry. So long time going in that way, yes.
Okay. I do have a question, though.
Yeah, go ahead.
Fasting. Is there an age limit?
There is an initial point, okay, before the age of B'nai Mitzvah, right, Bat Mitzvah, Bar Mitzvah, it is both not an expectation and is generally understood not to be done, except my understanding is in traditional environments, you sort of do a half fast in the years prior to get yourself used to it. So, when you're 11 years old or 12 years old, you kind of do it in that way. But the ruling on the fasting is very important. I say it every year, which is the fast is not the most important thing. It may seem that way. It's not the most important thing. And if it presents any kind of physical danger to you, if you're on a kind of medication that requires, right, one thing or the other, you are meant to do what you need to do to stay on medication. If you start to feel faint, the main idea of the rabbis is that if you're otherwise in a healthy position and you can fast, do so. If you're otherwise healthy and you're fasting and you start to not feel well, you are allowed to break your fast, but you don't go running down the street to eat a Big Mac, right? You take the least amount of water or food in that you can in order to maintain yourself so that you don't faint. But every year, that's why almost every synagogue in the city, maybe even something we ought to think about, has EMTs on hand, just because pretty much every Yom Kippur somebody faints. I remember a Kol Nidre before even the holiday really got going and somebody fainted. So it's always in that way. But the general idea of the rabbis is pikuach nefesh, right? That your life is almost always, in almost every circumstance, more important than even a mitzvah as significant as fasting on Yom Kippur. So great question. But, there are people that fast literally, and as they're 100 years old, they still fast. It just depends very much. Okay, next question, Marcia. You just have to bring it to, I think Janet had a question, and then Linda, and then Neil. We'll see how much time we got, because I might run out. I'll entertain other questions at Oneg, but, people might have plans. So,
Okay, I
yes.
think this is going to be an easy one.
Okay, good. I like easy ones.
I just would like to know, we have a new shofar blower.
Yes.
I would like to know where he got that incredible ram's horn
I-
and how he learned to play.
It's an excellent question. I'll get an answer for you from Eric. He learned that as a kid, and he actually had not really done it since I think he was, much younger. He has a style of shofar. There are a few different shofars that are considered kosher, right? But in the end, that style, the one that is longer, is not, if I remember correctly, is not from a ram. It's from another animal that is of the same, basic genus. The main expectation, aside from a few different things, is that it can't be straight. So if you ever see one that is just like this, it's not a kosher horn. But in his case, what I find is that the longer ones like that, they produce a much clearer sound. If you've ever heard a more traditional kind of ram's horn one, like the one my dad uses, much more shrill, much more shrieking kind of sound than his. But he did a beautiful job, and it's really hard. But I'll have to ask Eric exactly where he learned. But he's a board member, and he's a father of 3 children in our Hebrew school, which is an amazing thing. All right. I think, okay, so all right, Paul got it, but I called on other people in advance, Paul, so it's all right. Paul, go ahead, and then we'll make sure we get a chance for Linda and for Evelyn, and then we're going to wrap up. Yes?
A couple things.
Yeah.
First, I know how much you like apples and honey.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay.
I like honey.
There is in the Mishnah, I think, an actual comment where the honey is never used.
Yeah, I think, to be honest with you, first of all, bee honey is usually not what the Torah is referring to when it talks about honey. It's usually talking about date honey. That's called Ceylon.
Right.
Which
So
is delicious, by the way, if you ever
that honey
get
is
it.
not used.
Yeah.
The second thing is that when you lie down, when you do, okay?
Yeah.
I was taught for the many years I've been around that you need assistant to be picked up, and
It's-
you said without.
No. So the assistant thing is just actually what ends up being needed for the vast majority of people. But when you talk about, sometimes with mitzvahs or things like this, there's an idealized version that almost nobody can do. But I remember one of my clearest memories was being probably 11 years old and being asked to help our then
I was
Rabbi
gonna
Marshall
help
Meyer
you,
to get up.
But you got up so quick. I said, "Oh my."
No, I appreciate it. I actually was amazed that I got up that quickly. I'm convinced that one of these years, right, something is going to tear, and I don't know what. Could be a knee, could be pants, who knows? But it's not going to end well. But I was impressed this year that I was able, in fact, to do that.
And the tune for the shofar,
yeah.
he goes beep.
Yeah.
What's the beep about?
Oh no! So that actually is a style of teaching. It's different than a lot where there is sort of a punctuation, as it were, at the end of each blast. And I think some of that you'd have to ask Eric for, But this is, an aside. But my dad told me this story years ago, which he applied to the shofar. It was about a comment actually about hearing him do the Haftarah. But the person said to him, or said out loud to the community that when you hear somebody who really knows what they're doing, you're not just hearing their voice, you're hearing their teacher's voice and their teacher's voice. And shofar is very similar in that way. Some people pick it up on their own and they learn it on their own. But for most of history, there's usually a Baal Tukea in a community, and it's sort of a hereditary thing, right? They pass it to the next generation and so on. But it gets tricky actually in places where there are multiple people who can do it. We were lucky that Eric stepped in this year. But good question. I'll ask Eric a little bit more. I'll have better answers. Okay, Neil, we'll go to you, and then we'll go to Linda. Yes.
I have the mic.
You have the mic. I know. We're going to go to you. So what's your
All right.
question? That's okay. We can hear. You're good.
Most Jewish families have a mezuzah.
Yes.
What does the word mezuzah mean?
Oh, good question. That is a great question. Anybody in the room know that? For sure has an answer. I honestly, in all the years, I never even thought to ask. No, I'm glad. That's a good question, Neil. I will find out an answer. Look, in Hebrew, the beauty of a root language like Hebrew is that there is an answer to it. The answer might surprise us, though, right? It may not be some big revelatory answer. It might be something entirely. Because I honestly, I couldn't give you on one foot what that could possibly be. Nothing that comes immediately to mind.
I've heard many stories about what's inside the mezuzah. What's inside?
So no, it shouldn't be many stories. It should really be only one thing. So it's the Shema and its associated extra paragraphs. And it has to, for it to be a kosher scroll, it has to be an actual, basically a mini Torah scroll written by an actual sofer. If you get one that is a facsimile, unfortunately, it's not a kosher mezuzah. So if I've sadly ruined anyone's evening, just let me know. They're not inexpensive. It's what's called a cloth. They can be $100 or so. But if anybody feels like they have a not kosher mezuzah, come to me and I will help you to fix that problem, because it is meant to be. But excellent question. Excellent question. Yeah. You don't have the mic, but you'll ask. Okay. Yeah.
More about it.
Where it says mezuzah in Hebrew is doorpost.
Yeah, so I mean that would obviously make great sense, but I guess that makes sense. The question is sort of what its etymology is, right? Because the doorpost reference would be to Exodus, right? To the painting of the doorpost with blood on the night of the Passover, right? So the question is sort of, does it appear anywhere else in the Torah before that? And if not, that's the work of etymologists to figure out exactly where. Okay, Linda, we got to go. Neil, I'll answer your next question, but I just need to be fair to everybody, and we're going to eventually run out of time. Yes.
I was just wondering why some Reformed temples have 2 nights, some have 1, and why are the second night not as long as the first night?
Well, so, okay. In the event that you celebrate 2 days of festival, right, which, by the way, Rosh Hashanah, even for Reformed congregations that follow the practice of Israel, where there's only usually 1 day of Chag, 1 day of festival, Rosh Hashanah is still determined by the rabbis to be a 2-day holiday, and for reasons I won't go into now. So even in Reformed congregations, many of them do observe 2. A lot of them only observe 1. And to be honest with you, I can't answer for any other congregation. If I were guessing, I would guess that most likely it's because people won't be there. Yeah. I think, Rabbi Morris, I don't remember whether, I know we always did the second day Rosh Hashanah, but I think the question was whether, like on Sukkot and Pesach and Shavuos, whether we did 2 days. And what happens basically, Linda, is that if both days are holiday, then each night preceding is also holiday as well. So you do a service of that nature. And, again, I think the human element is what answers your question about why you see participation go down as time goes down. And most of just the 30-second, most of the reason why we do the 2-day thing is, again, I think I talked about it a few weeks ago. It's a calendar-based reality from back in the day where they couldn't be absolutely 100% certain based on the month, right, based on the moon, whether it's this day or it's that day, and this was basically a hedge to make sure. And it turns out it's fascinating. And even in Rosh Hashanah, what they would do is when they realized, let's say they didn't need the extra day, so the extra day was treated as if, like, it was always the correct day, and retroactively so, and so on. But it's an very interesting question. All right, Rivlin, I think you have the last one. Is another important? Okay. Well, I'll be happy to continue to answer questions afterwards if anybody would like. But as you can see, this is why I love this. I think all of you ask excellent questions, and I love nothing more than being stumped. And when Google can answer when I can't, is a good sign for all of us, I suppose. No, but look, all joking aside, always be careful whatever you Google, because if you get an answer, there's a chance that something is a bit off. But you'd be surprised how often it is correct. So, if you can't get in touch with me and you really need to know something quickly, just come to me and let me tell you the best places to go for answers. But the internet, again, for all of its terrible things, it does have some advantages. And I happen to think that right now, as far as like access to Jewish learning, we are living in the single greatest moment in history, because it is no longer required to be, right, a rabbi or to be a master of either Hebrew or Aramaic to be able to like study some very, very, very significant stuff. And it's all on Sefaria, and a lot of it is in English. And a lot of it is in English with explanations and things like that. So obviously I'm not trying to talk myself out of the job, but I very much, to me as a rabbi, right, my ultimate goal is more Jewish people knowing more about what it means to be Jewish. So if that is something that helps you, I'm all for it. I support it well. Well, we're going to turn to page 586 now, as we talked about with Kathy, Aleinu L'Shabeach, and again the words, V'anachnu kor'im, we bend our knees, U'mishtachavim, U'modim. Okay? And that's at least the way that I was taught. And for tonight, we'll face the ark. Why not? Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol latet gedula liotzer breshit shelo asanu kigoyei ha'aratzot velo samhanu k'mishpachot ha'adama shelo sam chalkinu kahem vegor aleinu kechol hamonam anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim Akadosh Baruch Hu, page 591. Ve'emar ve'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. Ask those in mourning and those observing yahrzeit to please remain standing. Everyone else may be seated at this time. We think first of those who've passed in our community in recent months: Stephen Dickman, Michael Fagenbaum, Sharon Lee Goldblatt, Harry Heller, Danny Horowitz, David Carlin, Morris Kramer, Leonard Lauder, Ann Lieber, Sandra Maslin, Jeanette Myrowitz, Carol Nadell, Perry Ranan, Phyllis Rowan, Gloria Sapiro, Edward Schiff, Louise Silberman, and Sue Wartor. We also mark the yahrzeit that occurred during the last week for Dr. John Abderkin, Philip Abrams, Joseph Alderman, Morris Appel, Mary Bernstein, Jerome Bloom, Dorothy Cohen, Judy Friedman, Terry Becker Friedman, Nathan Galpern, Leo Goldstein, Ellen Grossman, Reen Kern, Bernard Kulik, Rose Kushner, Claudio Lemos, Vilma Levine, Jeffrey Nagelberg, Paula Nelson, Gary Nussbaum, Rona Rube, Fred Rosenberg, Shirley Siemens, Minna Shapiro, Ernestine Spitz, and John Strong. In addition to those names that I just shared, if anyone is saying Kaddish for someone we did not mention tonight and would like to mention their name, now is an opportunity.
Marta Gagnon, Susan Levere, Trish Schaff, and Karen Whipple.
I'll invite our friends who are watching at home to add the names of your loved ones as well. I'll invite the mourners to join me on page 598, and if it's your custom to rise alongside them, you may do so at this time. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, ve'alma divra cherutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, b'agala u'v'zman kariv v'yimru amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevarach la'alam u'li'almei almaya. V'yit barach, v'yit shtabach, v'yit pa'ar, v'yit romam, v'yit naseh, v'yit hadar, v'yit aleh, v'yit halal, shemei dekudsha b'richu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata, tush b'chata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, amen. Please be seated. Shabbat shalom again. Gemar Chatima Tova. Just a couple of very quick announcements before we leave for this evening. First is, as you can see, we don't have our usual space in the social hall, in the community hall, so we're going to have our Oneg Shabbat downstairs this evening. You can follow the lovely Josie who will show you where to go, but it's just basically right below, not in the room filled with chairs and the television, but the other one, that side of the building. So we hope that you'll stick around. We also invite you back for services tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, and of course our Torah study at 12 o'clock as well. One other important thing to note, and a reminder of our High Holiday Food Drive. If you didn't already pick up bags, there are plenty. Should be available on your way out this evening. And again, if you could fill the entire bag, great. If you can only fill a little bit, great. Whatever you can do, really very much, again, appreciated. The only thing is just if you're going to make drop-offs, please do that only during normal hours. We had a few drop-offs at other times, and the problem is, of course, we live in a world where there are animals, and while we love to feed the animals, not in that particular kind of way. So please, 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 just come by really anytime that Gail or Shelley or myself are here between now and Yom Kippur, and even after the fact, if you don't get here, we can always make sure those donations get to the food pantry, and every year we feed many, many, many families as a result of this. So please, if you can, in any way, and if you're not in the area and you'd like to participate, you can also make a donation to the Social Justice Committee. We can make some purchases on your behalf. Let's see. I think obviously Yom Kippur services begin at 7 o'clock, and we hope very much that you'll be able to join us for at least some of. But in case you're not going to be with us, again, I wish you a meaningful end of these 10 days of repentance, these Aseret Yemei Teshuvah, and I hope wherever you may be, and even virtually, that it be a meaningful time of year, that we don't waste this opportunity for some really important, both personal inward growth, and I think hopefully growth in the world in which we share. So with that, any requests for a closing song tonight? Anything? Anybody? Sure. Shalom Aleichem sounds good. We're on page 627. Shalom Aleichem Malachei Hasharet Malachei